much indeed for joining us for the inspirational series of VCAS for Leading Minds. You have a highly successful career as an executive coach, as a business person. You're a prolific author as well, and I want to explore with you some ideas and perspectives that you have on inspirational leaders and leadership. But before we start, I'd just like to ask you, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Well, thanks for inviting me, and that's an interesting first question. I wanted to be a fireman, of all things, an action man of some kind. And I think that evolved to maybe wanting to be an airline pilot and even think about the forces. Little did I realise I'd become a coach, spending my time interacting and talking with people.
So what was it about being a fireman and being action that, what were the talents, and what was it that was thrilling you about that potential prospect?
My parents told me it was around wanting to help people actually and rescue people. And living in the countryside in the village, we were always used to doing things physically. So it was second nature to have to lift things and move things. So I guess being a fireman, I wouldn't have viewed at all as strenuous, for example, which some young people might today view it as too much like hard work.
Yeah, fantastic. So the talents and strengths that you developed from your early experiences, you lived in the countryside, you were doing a lot of physical, as a youth growing up. What experiences did you have that you've developed further that caused you to come into developing yourself as an executive coach? What was the background to that?
Yeah. I think part of it is empathy, caring for people. I think I was brought up in a village where we knew each other and we constantly help each other. So one never questioned being available. So people would knock on the door, come around for cups of tea, talk with my mum. When I became a little bit older, I'd end up being asked to help with things. I think I took that into my adult life. And also I took this sense of work hard, get on and have a full day's work and do whatever is required. Because helping farms in the area, one had no choice on that day but to go and pick the potatoes if they needed picking.
Yeah. So the beginning of your career, before you started working with leaders, in brief, just what were you doing? What did you study at university?
Really briefly, I was lucky enough to go to Cambridge, read economics, and then left and joined a UK multinational at the time called Coates Faella. They sent me off to Chile, Guatemala, some lovely places, the Dominican Republic, as a trainee finance manager, really at the bottom. And I was really lucky because that was just before computers came about. So I had to learn the basics of being a finance person with factories, doing manual bookkeeping, manual stock counting. And that's also stayed with me and maybe links to my childhood of just get on and do the work that needs doing.
Yes.
And so I feel today for some leaders today that are office bound, that maybe are younger, that haven't had those experiences. They've really been office based their entire careers with computers. I often remind them, go out and see your sales staff, go and visit the factory, go and visit the suppliers, actually potentially do some of the work of your colleagues.
So you went on from that studying. How did you get into executive coaching?
I almost fell into it via having been in finance, and then for a few years I worked in recruitment in Hong Kong. I was really between careers and talking to headhunters who said, well, come and join us. And while being a recruiter and running a recruitment firm, clients began asking me to provide some coaching to the new staff that were joining, the managers or leaders that we may have placed with them. And that I found really interesting. And at some point I found recruitment slightly mechanical, being a recruiter. And so I was happy to sell that business, but keep the coaching piece. In 2006, I've had now a decade kind of honing those skills. And only now do I feel perhaps I'm a good coach. It's taken me many years to kind of feel comfortable that I know what I'm doing and I can really be of impact.
How do you know you're a good coach? I know I'm jumping questions here, but I'm interested. How do you know? Because there's so many coaches, across the world, and they're all different types of coaches. You're a business coach, an executive coach. How do you know that you're good? I mean, yes, people can say I had a fantastic experience working with Nigel, but how do you know?
Because I've learned from my failures, I've learned from the mistakes, I've learned from those that I was formally coaching or mentoring, or realized that I was being asked to, and perhaps I wasn't doing such a good job. Learning early on that it's not easy to let go of guiding. Not easy to be in that space of just being a reflective mirror. And now I've kind of learned to kind of see myself and step back and to be calm. I'm otherwise quite an energetic person, and I've learned to kind of be in another space. And I know I've got a ways to go. And then of course I have the feedback. It's increasingly thoughtful, positive feedback, but equally I do look for feedback on, well, how could I be more impactful? Could I spend more time exploring this with you or helping you in this space, etc.
So tell me about, you're very focused on self-leadership and what, that being the foundation of how leaders create followership. What is self-leadership?
I would say it's a combination of knowing oneself, knowing what is going on in one's head and how one is coming across. And we're all imperfect. We've all got our histories with us that we're projecting, our ego, our needs, our motivations. And I do see patterns with leaders who are in denial, who are blind, quite blind to some of their patterns, how they strongly project things and then maybe don't see the impact. So only recently I was coaching someone who's very intellectual, and some of his staff told me he makes us feel small when we don't know things. And I explored with this leader, discovering actually that that's how they were brought up, being made to feel small, and it's maybe the first time that they've really spoken about it. So an example perhaps where helping the leader be more self-aware, bit of self-development, will I think quite easily lead them to being more successful with that particular team.
Very interesting. So you work across the world as well. Which regions of the world? And you mentioned about themes. I'm interested in the themes, the challenges, the leadership challenges that you are picking up across different geographies. So what geographies do you work across, and what are the themes that you're picking up on, the challenges currently? Okay.
So not quite all the world. I mean, based in Dubai, working as far as the moment it's Manila, Kuala Lumpur, so in Asia. I'm coaching someone in Nepal, Almaty in Kazakhstan, and then in the kind of Middle East region, and occasionally a leader in Africa. In terms of themes, I guess I've discovered that beneath the veneer of culture, beneath the veneer of background, be it ethnic, religious, national, whatever, we as leaders have the same sorts of patterns. So in terms of themes, I'm seeing more leaders being overworked with more anxiety. Dare I say it's this VUCA terminology we all speak about, that we're all having to do more with less resources, less time, maybe less understanding of what's happening. And so I sense leaders are more in need of reflection, of coaching, of mentoring, which is good because it correlates with the growth. And I still think leaders struggle as they cross borders and cultures. Multinationals have been doing it for decades, moving leaders around the world. But surprisingly, they often trip up. The leaders often trip up in forgetting that they're extremely German and haven't been perhaps in India working or the Middle East before. So that's a theme which is a recurring theme in my coaching.
You mentioned VUCA. I mean, for those people who are watching this video, they might say, what does that mean?
It's 4 letters for 4 words: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Words which we don't always use, and they are very interlinked, which really is just saying the world's going faster, it's more complex, we're more interconnected. It's harder for someone as a leader to kind of know, what should I be doing now? Where am I now? What are the problems I'm facing now? Where will my business be in 6 months or 24 months' time?
want to ask you a personal question now. What has been the biggest shift for you as a leader yourself? What's been the biggest learning or the biggest shift that you've had in your career that's enabled you to, because any self-awareness or whatever it happens to be, what would that be?
It almost sounds corny to say it, but I think it's the down moments. For example, it's the experience of the 2008-2009 crash, when I was becoming, one could say, a more serious coach, becoming more full-time, letting go of some other finance recruitment consulting I'd also been doing. And recently with the oil price fall, losing one or two key clients. So just having to go a little deep and manage, the feelings one has when things aren't going well, which all leaders face. And trying to also look at reality and kind of refocus, reframe, retarget, look for new goals. And also learning to be persistent, which I've jumped around because I've been moved in my career, a bit of a high flyer. And it's always lovely, but actually I was missing out on being persistent and staying with something for a number of years. And I think having been married now for 20 years is a useful basis for that. And having now been in coaching for 10 years, almost longer than been in any other role, has been a great learning.
Now I mentioned earlier that you are a prolific author, and could you, you've written many books. Could you just let us know briefly what are the books that you write about, and what's the purpose in you writing for you? What do you get out of writing these books? I know we get lots, but what do you get?
Well, I think I'd always enjoyed writing, but I never grumbled about having to write before, but never written any books. About 13 years ago, I wrote a book on job hunting when I had a few years in recruitment, and I enjoyed that. More recently, in 2012, I was approached to, could I write a book on some quite basic business topics? So I stepped into the space, writing books on leading and managing teams, on recruitment. Then I wrote a slightly more deeper, or could I say thicker book on how to succeed in the workplace, which really, I'd never before had to spend so much time researching something, and found it really valuable, and it really helped me in my work. And it also helped my branding, because people found me through the book. And most recently written a book about succeeding in life, which is an elevation of that, because as I coach people, I realize it sounds obvious when I say it, but our work lives and the rest of our lives are intermingled. So people who are not doing so well as a parent, or being stressed in their marriage, or they're not exercising enough, or they're dealing with other issues, be it pollution in the city they're living in, it impacts on their work. So the book I wrote with the title of 100 Things Successful People Do is essentially a guidebook to life. And I might like to say it's my 30 years of adult life in that book as well, of experiences.
I'd like to share a quote with you. And it's something actually that I've noticed, I think you're familiar with, and I'd like to talk to you about something that you think is important to you, a quote or a saying or something. It's not really a quote, but it's something that, I'll just say it, it's stand for something. Stand for something. And I get a sense that you might connect with that in some way. And what does that mean, do you think, for yourself, and also for leaders? What is it about stand for something that resonates with you?
It's actually quite interesting, actually. You say that, and I hear you say stand for something, and what comes to me is knowing what you're about, knowing what is your character. And it's funny, my most recent book, one of the chapters is entitled Focus on Character, Not Popularity. And it's, what are we standing for in those difficult moments in life? And leaders in particular, with the ethics issues we're all facing, integrity issues which organizations or industries, the worldwide, sport, media, politics are all facing. I think encouraging leaders to know what they stand for, and have the courage to then let that be known at key moments, to speak up. But I think most importantly, to know inside what you stand for. What do you want with your life? What is acceptable, not acceptable? What are you willing to do? So, and then think about your ambitions with what you stand for. Well, how ambitious are you really? Because I think a lot of leaders are blind. They're just chasing the career they're in, the next promotion, the next positive performance evaluation, the next possible maximum bonus, and without perhaps having that reflective time.
And what are the consequences of not having that reflective time for them?
At some point they may hit a wall and feel, I'm getting burnt out, I'm stressed, I'm not enjoying this, and it's built up over time. It could have been dissipated, it could have been lessened had they had the reflection time earlier and being asked, well, what do you stand for? What are you about? What do you want to achieve in your life? Where are you heading? How much more of ABC are you wanting? Are you balancing career, family, home life? Are you happy being an expatriate, or do you want to be back home? And the price can be painful to organizations as well when those leaders perhaps cut corners because they haven't really thought through what are they standing for. Are they looking for quick success in a certain way? Are they wanting to avoid issues? And if you have a culture and organization of many leaders not knowing what they stand for, I haven't studied this, but I have to feel that organization's performance is somehow weakened or lessened.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask you, what quote do you have that you would like to share with the audience that watches this video that you think is important for people to consider?
It's the being master of your fate, and the actual wording is just momentarily gone from me. But it's the words from William Henley. I think in the South African rugby film it was quoted by, I think, Mandela, or the rugby captain quoted it. And it's, I'm the master of my fate, I'm the captain of my soul. And it links to this idea of knowing what you stand for, and goes back to the first question about self-awareness, self-development, self-reflection being at a core, I think, any successful leaders, let's say, toolkit or foundation. There we are.
Thank you very much indeed, Nigel.
Thank you for having me here. It's been a pleasure actually being able to reflect and talk about these things with you.
Thank you.